the bill became law. In May of 1947, with the referendum of the school election finally on the ballot, the citizens of Arlington went to the polls and won by a 2-to-1 vote the right for its citizens to choose their own board. With excitement high, the school improvement group worked to get out the vote on election day. For this first school board election in Virginia's history, an unprecedented number of citizens turned out to vote, some 13,000.
Mary voted at the same place she had registered. Voting is such an important affair that there is quite a bit of formality connected with it. Election judges and clerks are in charge of the polling places to see that all voting is properly done. Once again, Mary signed her name on a card. This card was checked against the registration records to be sure she was qualified to vote. Mary was registered, so she went along to the election judge. The judge gave her 2 ballots, one for each political party that was electing nominees. In some states, she would be given only the ballot of the party she was supporting. But in this open primary, she was given both of them to make her choice of party and individual candidates in the privacy of the voting booth. Meanwhile, party watchers are observing the election to report any irregularities. Policemen watch for any violations of the election laws. And the election officials, of course, are in charge. In the voting booth, Mary marked the ballot of the party she was supporting. She discarded the ballot of the other party, while an official made sure it was a legal ballot that she put in the box. So Mary had voted for the first time as a citizen of the United States, ready to mark her ballot. Now, how Mary voted is her own private business. Her state allowed her, if she chose, to vote for all the candidates from one party by putting an X in the box at the top of the party list. But many states have stopped this because well-informed voters usually prefer to vote for the man they consider best, regardless of party. This is generally known as the Australian ballot, because this method of secret voting originated in Australia in the early 19th century, becoming common in the United States in the 1890s. When voting hours are over, the voting place is closed and the election officials prepare to count the votes. Generally speaking, only the election officials and party watchers are allowed to be present when the votes are counted. In some communities, impartial watchers are appointed by the courts. The boxes are unlocked and the ballots are taken out and counted orally. Election officials are the only ones permitted to handle the ballots. The election clerks mark the count on their official tally sheets. Some ballots are marked for straight party tickets. Others are marked for individual candidates. A ballot should be marked carefully. For example, if one is marked both ways, it may be discarded in many states. If an X is marked outside a box, election officials in some states may invalidate the ballots. In some places, a ballot may be discarded also if 2 candidates are marked for the same office. Usually, very few ballots have to be discarded because of improper marking. When all the ballots are tallied, the votes are totaled. Then, the ballots are put back in the boxes, locked and sealed, and sent to a place of safekeeping where they'll be kept until it is certain that there is no question about the legality of the election. The tally sheets are sent to the city or county election headquarters. There they are added to the returns from all the other local polling places.
Today, a number of states have developed a system which offers to the rank and file of the party voters a better opportunity to express their opinions in the nomination of candidates for the party tickets. This is the direct primary, where voters go to the polls and by secret ballot express their preference among the candidates put forward by various groups of party leaders and elect the delegates to the national party conventions. No matter how they are chosen, the delegates who go to state or campaign strategy is planned at every level to reach as many voters as possible. Every meeting American voter than the candidate himself. How well the party has succeeded in its appeals is decided on the day when the voters go to the polls.
Wish they'd hurry this thing up. I've got to get back to work. I sometimes wonder if it's worth all the trouble.
You bet it's worth all the trouble, friend. Ever stop to think how things could end up if we didn't vote?
Sure, but the political parties run everything anyway.
Well, if you had no parties, you'd have no elections.
That's a joke. Why would...
Well, the political parties help us to decide who's going to be on the ballot. What if everyone wanted his name on the ballot? You'd have hundreds of names. And even if it were possible to get them all down, you wouldn't know what candidate was good or what he stood for.
I guess you're right.
Thus, all over the nation, because political parties have effectively organized the machinery for democratic expression, millions of voters are able to go to the polls and participate in choosing the men who will serve them in public office.
That's it. Ogden concedes. Which is your...
It begins here, every fourth year. Each voter helping decide who shall be President of the United States. Which man shall enforce the laws of the land? The Constitution delegates few specific powers to the presidency, one of our three coordinate branches of government. But over the years, a number of dynamic presidents have interpreted their powers to develop and strengthen
our own needs and our own problems. There are too many thousands and millions of us to go to a meeting. So in order to make sure that we can all have our say, we have the right to vote for representatives, people who will speak up for us. We send them to Congress to make...
By the time voting day came, most of our people knew which type of government they wanted for Riverside. Choosing the most workable form of government was the first step toward solving our community problems. Problems of maintenance and construction, water supply, police and fire protection, health and welfare. And we had learned something else. We people of Riverside, we had learned that it is the continued interest of the people of a community that makes its government good. Only if we participate in our government, whatever form, will we have a good community government.
The boxes in which the marked ballots will be placed are also sent to each polling place. On Election Day, a flag flies in front of each polling place. The polling place is often the home of someone who lives in the precinct. The voter gives his name and address to the precinct workers, then signs his name. His signature is compared to the one he made when registering. This identifies the voter and helps to prevent someone else from voting in his name. Another worker locates the voter's name on the precinct list and checks it off. This prevents anyone from voting more than once. The voter then takes his ballot into the voting booth.
Here, he marks the ballot in secret. Since no one can see him or know how he votes, he can vote as he chooses. He cannot be forced into voting a certain way. After the ballot is marked, it is folded and placed in a locked ballot box. Instead of ballots, many places use voting machines. Voting on a machine is also secret. This woman pushes a lever by the name of each person for whom she wants to vote. Her votes are automatically recorded in the machine and the marks removed when she turns a lever to open the curtain. At the end of the day, an election official unlocks the voting machine. He turns a crank to reveal the number of votes each candidate has received.
On Election Day, the nation votes. Democracy speaks. 70 million people go to the polls, choosing their president, as Americans have done since the election of George Washington a century and 3/4 ago. This tradition, this heritage, unchanged and unbroken, has been and is today a living witness to the strength and growth of democracy in action in America.